Hi, recording. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. We're in the middle of week 2 already. Time is going really fast, but in a good way. Getting a lot done and not only just doing it, but we're doing it well. So that's really good. I've been very impressed with everybody's work. The quality and the content has been really good. So I'm really proud of everybody. You guys are rock stars for the summer. So when we go back to school, whenever, even if it's online, I'm going to brag about my English 2 summer class that they were so awesome. So be prepared. Let's see. The video for yesterday is already in your green folder. So if you missed yesterday morning or you need to see something again, that is there. We had a good discussion about the necklace, about some of the literary devices and the techniques, including the theme, symbolism, irony. All of those are really good points that we made. Even though it's a short story, it's very dense, it's very rich in information and material. So if anybody says, oh, short stories aren't that good, tell them they're wrong. I've been looking at your discussion threads when it comes to the lottery and the necklace, and a lot of you have really good ideas. So I'm glad that you are enjoying the stories so far and that they're interesting to you in some way, especially the surprise endings. I enjoy the surprise endings myself. Let's see. So yesterday was pretty much our last day talking about the literary devices in literature, such as those short stories. So right now we're going to start moving on to some poetry. And like I said, if you've been my student before, some of this will look really familiar. And if it does, that's awesome. But it's still a really good opportunity for us to have a refresh and to have it again. So that way our skills can only grow. And of course, anybody who was with Ms. Spears, you had poetry with her as well. Most of us did it together. We had meetings together, and that's why we made it part of our El Día de los Muertos project. So we did a lot of poetry that had to do about the Day of the Dead. We don't have the Day of the Dead right now, so we're still going to do some poetry that has some different subjects. I hope you like them. They're some of my favorite poems, and then of course you have the opportunity as well to find some poems that you like, and as well to create a couple of poems yourself. So that'll be for today, tomorrow, and Friday. We're going to cover information and lessons about poetry. So obviously there's many different kinds of poems, but we're only going to focus on some of them. There's about 3 or 4 different styles we'll talk about, and then from there, of course, if you find a poem of a different kind, good morning. Let's see, who's that? Mr. Angel, good morning. And so if you find other poems of a different style, that's perfectly fine. They are still good for us to study in class. Excuse me. But the way that we study these poems is a method of analysis, and this method is called TPCASTT. So TPCASTT is an acronym, and each letter signifies a step or a pass that we have to do in our analysis. So it's a TPCASTT, and we're going to go through what each step signifies and means, and the work that we have to do for each step. Now, this analysis helps us. I'm going to show you this real quick. So this is one of the poems we're going to do, but you can kind of see just how much information I was able to write. So I copied down the poem by hand, and all those little symbols and underlines, all of those, that's information that the poem has. And that's information that all of us are going to discover when we read these poems as well. And each poem has all this information, whether it's a 3-line poem, whether it is 20 pages long, which is possible for a poem. They all have this really good information. Let's see, what's Marjorie? Good morning. So we're going to go over our poetry presentation. It's an introduction to poetry in general, and then we are going to go step by step through the TPCASTT analysis method, so we have a better understanding of what the method is and how to do it. Excuse me, and then we'll also look at a poem and analyze it while we're here together. Okay. Any questions so far? Or anything, kind of comments? For those of you who just joined us, we are finishing, yesterday we finished all of our discussion with the necklace. Today, Thursday, and Friday, we are talking about poetry. And the meeting from yesterday, the recording is now available in your green folder. So all of that information is there for you. And I'm doing my best to stay as organized as possible so all of you can find any resources or information that you need. And if for any reason some of it's confusing, please tell me and I'll try and fix it. Okay. So just joining us, good morning. Hello, hello. In your week 2 folder, your blue week 2 folder, you have new content available to you. So you have this PowerPoint slide that is a poetry introduction and TPCASTT analysis method. So if you want to open that right now, you can, or if you just want to follow along when I share my screen, that is okay too. You have those options. Start. I'm sorry guys, my allergies are really bad. My nose is very itchy. Okay, so this is we're starting our unit on poetry. I hope you like it. Poems are very interesting because they give us a lot of information and emotion in a very small package. So most poems that we will look at are a page or less. So, about this long or shorter. And they tell us a lot of information. They give us a lot of images. They give us a lot of feeling and emotion. So they're really interesting because, as we saw with short stories from the lottery and the necklace, you can put a lot of information into a small space. And that is one of my favorite things about poems, and songs can be poems. So maybe if you have a particular musician or band or artist that you like, maybe you like their lyrics, las letras, because they are very powerful, they're very emotional, and they speak to you in some way. And that's really what poems are too. So, what is a poem? A poem or poetry is a type of literature. So we went from literature writing stories, like the necklace, the lottery, and this is a little bit more artistic. A poem is more artistic. It attempts to activate a reader or a listener's imagination or emotions. So that's what I mentioned before. You have a lot of imaginations. You're seeing things in your mind and your feelings as well. So the author of a poem is called a poet. So that's an important word to remember. I know last year we had a little bit of confusion as to who the author of a poem is. It's a poet. So P-O-E-T, a poet. So this poet carefully chooses and arranges language by meaning, sound, and rhythm. That's not the only things they use, but for our class and our purposes, those are some of the 3 really important things that the poet uses in order to tell us a story or to entertain us with these carefully chosen words. Good morning, who's joining us? Good morning, Mr. Luis. So that's a poem. So it's artistic, it is a type of literature, it's a type of writing, and it focuses a lot on images and feelings. And a poet is the person who writes poems. That's a recap of that slide. So these are some important vocabulary words for us. We don't have added vocabulary this week. Our vocabulary for the week was about the necklace story. So I'm helping you this week with vocabulary. If you feel like you want to create a vocabulary page for these words, that'll be excellent. That is good practice for you to really remember when we are talking about poetry, when we are talking about our TPCASTT analysis method. So if you want to write a vocabulary sheet for verse, we already have verso in Spanish. And the definition is a group of lines in a poem or a song. It's a noun. And soon, throughout this presentation, you will have examples. So the same thing for a stanza and a estrofa. So a section or a verse of a poem. The poems we are reading, they have 1 or 2 stanzas, so we don't have a ton of stanzas. But when you get to junior year, English 3, English 4, you will experience poems with a lot more stanzas. One of my favorite things about poems are the rhymes. So to repeat the final sounds of 2 or more words, but I am also going to show you some examples of rhyming that happens in the middle of a sentence or in the middle of a verse. And it's pretty interesting. I hope you like it when I show you. So here we have the example of hide and side. So the I'd, hide, side, and then I and sky. So all 4 of them technically work. We have that I sound. We have metaphors as well. So as a comparison between 2 unlike things. So we have these 2 things that are not alike, and we're going to say that they are similar. So if you say he is a shining star, we know that he is a person, a human being with a body. They cannot physically, it's impossible for them to be a shining ball of gas in the universe, in the galaxy. So we know in our minds that if you say he is a shining star, it's physically impossible. But it gives us the image that this person is very light and bright and that there is something good about that person. So already with one sentence, we get the idea of images and feelings. You say the snow is a white blanket. So the snow is frozen water that falls from the air. It is not a blanket made out of fabric or material. But when you look outside a window and you see after a snow falls, it looks like everything has a blanket over it. So it gives us that image. If you like the snow, maybe that gives you a good feeling inside. You say las nubes de algodón. Okay, well, clouds are water in the sky. They are not made out of cotton, so that's impossible. But it gives us an image of really white, fluffy, big, billowy clouds. And the last example, sus hijos eran las luces de su existencia. Well, people again cannot be light, but we have that image that these children are the light of his existence, the light of his life or her life. That means that these children are very important to this person. So even though we have things that are not similar, they give us a better image and a better meaning. One thing we see a lot in poetry, similes. So it looks like simile, but it's really simile. It's a comparison between 2 unlike things, but so it's very similar to a metaphor. And I admit I mix these up sometimes. So it happens to everybody. But we have to use the word like or as. Those words have to be present. Those are obligatory for it to be a simile. So if you say you were as brave as a lion, that's a simile. But if you say you are a brave lion, that is a metaphor. Because we put this word as, it changes. Let me go ahead and check that. Okay. If you say, oh, you are white as a ghost, are you scared? As white as a ghost implies that someone is pale, they are scared, they have fear. Last night I slept like a what? Like a log. So we imagine we have that feeling of a very deep, profound sleep. I saw this in an advertisement for Dorito chips. So Doritos taste like awesome feels. So if you think, well, how do awesome feels taste? That's how Doritos taste. And even this example in Spanish, sus ojos brillaban como dos estrellas. Are the stars eyes? No, but they shine like como dos estrellas. So we have that image, and this little person, this little monito, has those eyes in there. We know that's not true, but we give that feeling of bright eyes like stars. Okay, so those are important vocabulary. Like I said, if you want to make a vocabulary sheet with that information, go for it. It will only help you. I talked to some people the class in the afternoon, and they were saying, "Oh, Miss Molinar, we need more work." So, well, I don't know about that, but you could make more work if you continue building your vocabulary each day. So that is something that you can do independently. Okay, my next question, who is a poet? So remember, a poet is the author of a poem or poems. And so maybe we think of people who were ancient, so way, way, way back in the day. Maybe this person is a poet. Maybe these guys are poets. Perhaps. Are any of these people poets? Maybe some of these people look familiar from history books or other media, maybe some music, some musicians in here. Well, the answer is yes, this is a poet. These are poets. And yes, all of these people are poets as well. They have written poems or songs that we can now analyze. So they're all poets. And of course, all of you are poets as well. Even if you don't believe me, yes, you are. I've had some students write some amazing poems. So I believe in all of you that you're capable. Okay. So remember, a poet is the writer, the author of a poem. Okay, how are we doing on time? We might finish. Okay, so TPCASTT, that's how we say this word. TPCASTT, it's a method of poetry analysis. So sometimes if we read a poem, and maybe some of you have read poems in the past and you think, I don't get it, I don't like it, what are they talking about, this is dumb, or I'm confused, that's fine, because poets write things in very particular ways to give us that idea, that image, that feeling. But sometimes it's hard for us to find it. So that's why we have this analysis method to help us with our understanding and our comprehension. So an analysis, well, what is an analysis? So an analysis is a detailed examination. So we look at everything in little parts and little details of the elements or the structure of something. It is a distinction and separation of the part of everything so we understand its principal elements. So it's some core ideas. So you can do an analysis on a person. You can do an analysis in science class, in math class. You can analyze maybe one of the algorithms or one of your problems to see what is missing. Maybe you got something wrong in math class and you need to analyze your work. Maybe like, oh, I put a negative here when I need a positive, or I missed X. Whatever your analysis tells you, you look for those elements in a very careful manner. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to look at all these little pieces in poems so we have a careful manner so we can find as much meaning as possible. So this is what every letter stands for. So the first T is for title. The P is for paraphrase. C is for connotation. A is for attitude. S is for shift. T is for title, again, so title happens 2 times. And the last T is theme. So theme is familiar to us from the necklace and the lottery. So we already know that theme has to do about the larger meaning, what the poem is about, or what the literature is about. So here's everything in Spanish: título, parafrasear, connotación, I think I spelled that wrong, sorry, actitud, movimiento, título, and tema. So we have all of these elements that we have in Spanish as well. And later, when we do some poetry analysis, you can analyze poems in Spanish. That's perfectly fine. They still have the same elements that we're going to talk about in each of these steps, in each of these passes. Now, if I'm going a little fast, A, I apologize, and B, this presentation is available to you. So it's in Schoology. So later, if you think, you know what, I want to look at it again, you have this available to you. So when you do your analysis, you have it and you can do it together with the presentation. So I'm going to show you how TPCAST works with a poem. So like I said, if this poem is familiar to you from my class last year, that's wonderful. This is a good review. And for all of my new students, welcome. This is a good poem to start with. The vocabulary is pretty easy and it helps us with really good images. So the first step of our TPCAST is title. So this is the title of the first poem we're going to talk about. So the full title is The Rose That Grew from the Concrete. So now we have to ask ourselves, what information does this title give us? What can we predict? What do we think this poem is going to be about? So maybe it's about a garden, since we have roses. Maybe it's about a garden in a city because of all the concrete. Maybe it's about a gardener. We don't know. The person, the character is a gardener. Maybe it's a woman, maybe it's a man, we don't know. But we are looking at all of this information in the title to see what we can pull from the title. So we know some stuff about roses. We can picture a rose in our mind. Like, okay, I got a rose. We can imagine concrete. So that's when you walk outside, the sidewalk, the pavement. Okay, but usually those things don't go together. They kind of go this way. So gardens versus the city, don't really know. Predict that the poem will be about a flower and someplace in a city. So that's our prediction. So that's our first step in TPCAST. So that's the first T. These are the questions we ask ourselves. So what do we predict this poem will be about? We just did that. Write down your predictions. So if you're at home and you have a sheet of paper and you have a poem and you're writing, and then you can put something like this. So you have a separate sheet of paper. So I started analyzing this poem and I put the T. I put my predictions. And then on the next step, I'm already writing. So you guys don't believe this, but at least this teacher, I don't know if your other teachers, I follow the same steps for TPCAST, and it helps me a lot. So you write down your predictions, and it's true. Later, we're going to think about the title again, and we're going to see, were we correct? Were we wrong? What information do we have at the end of the poem? So we're going to compare our ideas from the beginning to our ideas at the end. That's why the T for theme is there 2 times. Okay, so now let's read the poem. So this is going to be the poem with the title and its complete text. The rose that grew from the concrete. Did you hear about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete? Proving nature's law wrong, it learned to walk without having feet. Funny it seems, but by keeping its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. Long live the rose that grew from concrete when no one else ever cared. I'm going to read it one more time, but I found an error. Proving nature's law wrong. There we go. I'm going to read it one more time, a little bit slower. Rose that grew from the concrete. Did you hear about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete? Proving nature's law wrong, it learned to walk without having feet. Funny it seems, by keeping its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. Long the rose that grew from concrete when no one else ever cared. So that's the poem. That's the entire poem. It's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines long, so it's one stanza. So now we can move on to the next step after we talk about some pronunciation. So these words are most often mispronounced. So if you thought, I'm not really sure how to say that one, or what is this word? These are also good vocabulary words too, in case you're having a doubt. Normally in class, in a classroom, we would repeat and make sure we have all of these done. So that's a good challenge for you to really make sure that your pronunciation for these words is is good. So that way, other people can understand and communicate with us clearly. So here are the words just by themselves: hear, grew, crack, concrete, proving, wrong, learn, feet, funny, funny again, seems, keeping, dreams, breathe, live, else, cared. So those are some words to check out. Now we're on the next part of the TPCAST. We're on the next step. It's the P in TPCAST. It's paraphrase. Paraphrasing is writing something in your own words. So I'm going to write this poem with my words, but saying the exact same thing. After reading the poem, rewrite it in your own words. So even though we all may read the same poem, we're going to say it in our own way. So I'm going to say it different than you are, than your classmate, than the other classmate. But the idea should stay the same. This may be 3 sentences or a page, depending on the particular poem. Excuse me. So if your poem is half a page long, your paraphrase might be similar. But it's not. If your poem is 5 lines long, your paraphrase should not be 5 pages long. So it has to match, it has to be appropriate to the size. So here's some examples, just of regular sentences. So the original sentence is, the price of a resort vacation typically includes meals, tips, and equipment rentals, which make your trip more cost effective. So that's something you would see maybe in a travel brochure or online if you want to go on a vacation. But another way to say all of that really important information, you can just say all-inclusive resort vacations can make for an economical trip. So what took 2 lines, I can say in 1. And it's the same idea that if you go to a nice place for a vacation, you can save money. Look, I paraphrase a paraphrase. Original. He has tons of stuff to throw away. Another way you can say it, he needs to get rid of a lot of junk. Both, I'm saying the same thing in different ways. So paraphrasing, maybe for example, you're talking to a friend, there's some gossip, some chisme. Another friend says, hey, what's going on? You say the event or the chisme, the gossip in your own words. You're paraphrasing. Not that gossip is good, but we all do. Okay, so here's the poem again in its original form. This is how the poet wrote it. My version of it. So do you know about the beautiful thing that grew in an impossible environment? Everything was against, but it continued to grow and thrive despite the odds. Even if nobody wants it, the beautiful thing will live for a long time. I just said the exact same thing, so let's go for the first part. Did you hear about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete? My version. Do you know about the beautiful thing that grew in an impossible environment? They're different. They have different ways of saying it, but the idea is similar. The second part. Proving nature's law wrong, it learned to walk without having feet. Funny it seems, but by keeping its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. So it's 2 lines, and I put it into 1. Everything was against it, but it continued to grow and thrive despite the odds. So I said 2 lines in 1. And the last part, long live the rose that grew from concrete when no one else ever cared. My version, even if nobody wants it, the beautiful thing will live for a long time. I'll admit that paraphrasing can be one of the hardest steps of TPCAST because it means that you really have to understand what's going on in the poem. So one idea, one trick that I will share with you is sometimes myself and other people I've talked to, the paraphrase, it comes, even though it's in the TPCAST, maybe I'll make some notes or have some ideas, and then I'll go through the other steps, and then I have a better idea, and I'll complete the paraphrase as one of the last things I do. So even though I may have some ideas, maybe I can't think, it's hard to write, I'm not sure yet, I have a doubt about what the poem signifies or means, so I'm going to wait. So sometimes you can have a pause on the paraphrase. That doesn't mean you just don't do it, you just maybe do it a little bit later. So that's something that not a lot of people talk about. So sometimes you just have to wait, do it at a later time because you'll have more information available to you when you finish all of the other steps. Speaking of steps, the next step is the C in TPCASTT. It's connotation. So connotation technically has a lot of other little steps in it, and you're going to see all the slides we're going to talk about. Oh, we're not going to finish today, but that's okay. And so that's where we look at all these little bits and pieces, like I showed you on the paper. We have like these circles, brackets, underlines. That's where this comes in. So you're looking for figures of speech, like the metaphor, simile, the sound, how do these words sound, and the effects of the poem. So these are the poetry vocabulary. We had a few slides previously. And these elements, they add to the meaning. So that's what connotation means. So if you say something like tutoring to a student. Now, if a student has one teacher for tutoring and they don't like the teacher, then maybe tutoring, they're like, oh, they hear that word and they don't like it. But maybe, for example, like with Ms. Morinat's class, and we have a classroom, say, come to tutoring, and it's really nice. We have snack, we go over work, we talk about things. So hopefully my students with me have a good connotation, a good memory with the word tutoring. So it's the same word, but the connotation can be very different. Let's look at it. We have things like rhyme, diction, how you say something, simile, metaphor, and there are other elements, we're going to discuss them. They give us a better image and a better feeling of a poem. And so that's why I said maybe when we have paraphrase as a step, we have to pause. So we pause the paraphrase after connotation, and then we have a lot more information. One of the elements of connotation is image. What do we see? So as I told you in the title, a rose. So if I say a rose, oh, we have an image. Maybe it looks something like Valentine's Day, where it's a red rose or a lot of red roses, or a garden. When I think of rose, I always think of yellow roses because they're one of my favorite flowers. So already I think yellow rose. That's my image. But your image might be different. Maybe it's your favorite flower or you don't like roses. So that's a connotation right away. So connotations are going to be different for each person. The image of a crack in the concrete. So if we can picture in our mind a sidewalk or a piece of cement, and then it says a crack. That's a very powerful image. Is it a crack right down the middle? Is it, zigzag lines? We don't know. But crack in the concrete means something is broken. Proving. So if you prove something, you are saying this is correct or this is incorrect. You're using evidence. So it's a very strong argument. So proving something is pretty strong. That's a strong image. Funny. If we think of the word funny, what does that mean to us? Is it a funny video? Is it our friend? Is it a family member? So funny gives us a big image in our head. Dreams. When you hear the word dreams, do you think of when yourself, when you're actually sleeping and your brain is working and you have dreams? Or do you think of one day I dreamed to visit Japan? So what kind of dreams are they? But it gives us a very strong image. And those are just think of things like fresh air. What is fresh air? What does that look like to you? What image does that give you? Metaphor. So if you notice, the poem is staying the same, but we're already seeing all of this information when it comes to these different colors. So a metaphor. So here we're saying there's things that are unlike, like a rose and feet. A rose cannot have feet. It has roots, but no feet. And it's saying not only does this rose have feet, that it learned to walk. We know that a rose cannot do that. A rose cannot have a dream, but here we're saying a rose is keeping its dream. And here, even though we have the process of, what's it called? The scientific process where the plants convert oxygen and carbon dioxide. Yeah, that's possible, but is it really breathing? No. But in this case, the metaphor tells us that the rose is walking, it has feet, it has dreams, it learned to breathe. So this unlikely combination is giving us an image. It's giving us this metaphor. Rhyme. So rhyme is important. I think I have videos that I want to show you. So rhyme. So here the rhyming happens at the end. So here we see here, from a crack in the concrete, learn to walk without having feet. So eat, eat. And then we see learn to breathe fresh air when no one else ever cared. So air, aired. Those are similar in rhyme as well. We're gonna go ahead and stop kind of here because I know, again, we're going fast and there's a lot of information. We're going to continue tomorrow. But I wanted to show you some things on YouTube because rhyme in music happens all the time. No matter what language of music you listen to, English, Spanish, Portuguese, Japanese, Quechua, invented languages, whichever. They all have rhyme in some way because it's more interesting, it's more lyrical, it gives us emotion and feeling, just like poems. So the first two are rap songs, and actually, if you don't know who the poet, the author of The Rose That Grew from the Concrete yet, it's actually Tupac. So Tupac wrote this poem. Surprise. And so I think this should be one of his videos. Don't worry, it's a clean version. It's appropriate for school. And we're going to see after the ad, we're going to see how much rhyming is possible in a poem, in a lyric. Sorry, this ad is gross. But don't smoke, it's bad.
The question I wonder is after death, after my last breath, when will I finally get to rest with this oppression? The punish the people that's asking questions and those that possess. Still from the ones without possession, the message I stress. To make it stop studying your lesson, don't settle for less. So
I'm going to pause it right there, but look at all the different colors that are going on. So we have the sound, so breath, rest, oppress, quest, possess, stress, less. We have the rhymes in blue, so oppression, question, possession, lesson. All of these are similar. So throughout, from the first line all the way down, we have so many different instances of rhyme. So sometimes in poems it's just at the end, but it's totally possible to have them in a lot of different places. So, excuse me, this is just one of them. I gave you I have the links in yours, I believe. If not, let me know. There's another one from Outkast, Andre 3000. A little bit of a different music style, but it still has rhyme.
The quickest muzzle, throw it on my mouth and I'll decline. King meets queen in the puppy love thing. Together dream about that crib with the good yes swing. On the oak tree, I hope we feel like this forever. Forever, forever, ever, forever, ever, forever. Never seems that long.
Okay, I'm going to pause that one, but Oswald, you can listen to this later. But one of the things I want to notice, have us notice before we end for today, is obviously we still have the same thing. So we have time, nine, I'm, line, fine, I, all of those sounds are rhyming. But the last part before I pause, where it's like forever, ever, forever, ever, forever, ever, that has also rhyme, but it also has repetition. And repetition is important. And look, it's one of the next connotation things. So here it says the rose that grew from concrete, and it repeats the rose that grew from concrete. So they're saying that, look, alert, alert, this is important. We're going to say it more than one time. We're going to do it two. And if we look at this song, they say it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. That's a really important information in this lyric. And the one last thing about rhyme and repetition, I don't know if any of you know about the musical Hamilton. Miss Molinat is obsessed. But that has very complicated rhyming as well, because a lot of it does have rap. And so here we have the perfect rhyme because it's at the end. So here we can see squalor, scholar. So you can hear it.
Squalor, grow up to be a hero and a scholar.
So here we have that at the end. That's fine. But if you're interested, this shows some, again, some more color coding with the rhymes, and it shows you different types of rhymes. We're not going to get into those details in our class, unfortunately, especially in summer. We have to move quickly, but we have things like internal rhymes, imperfect rhymes, assonants, consonants. All of those are very different things, but they're really interesting. So if you have extra time today, I suggest you check it out. I'm going to make sure I make the links available to you. I'll probably put them in our week 2 folder. I will make a note. But I think that's really interesting. And if you start thinking about the music that you like, if you like rap, if you like music theater, if you like even reggaeton, they rap a lot too. So for different, I think Bad Bunny's lyrics actually are really complicated. So that's another good person for you to take a look at, because there's rhyming everywhere. And it's important for us to kind of recognize that and to appreciate all of the different types of art that we know and that we like, that it's complicated and it gives us images, it gives us feelings, and that's one of the reasons why we like music so much. Okay, so we're almost out of time for today. Whew, that was a doozy. So we have to finish the presentation tomorrow. So that's what we'll start with. We'll finish the presentation, and then hopefully we'll have the chance to start analyzing some poems, and we'll go from there. But go, I'm going to give you access to one more thing in Schoology. So it's going today, the new items are the poetry introduction and find a poem to analyze. So what this part does is it gives you a website, and it's called poetryfoundation.org. And so you can start looking at some poems. Maybe you can start with a title, paraphrase, and a couple of those steps of connotation. So that way you can start practicing. If you have an opportunity, look at the rest of the PowerPoint. So maybe you can ask questions and you're ready. So for tomorrow, if I say, do you have questions about this slideshow? Like, yes, I had a question about the shift. What do you mean by shift? And we can go over that and make sure it's intense. Or if you wanted to go back and say, oh, can we go look at a metaphor again? Sure, we can do that as well. Continue working on your work from the rest of the week, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a good rest of your day. Do your rest of the work, and have a good Wednesday. Thank you for